Hi, good evening, comrades. Welcome to the Patriots World Mental Health Day 2025. The theme, access to service, mental health in catastrophes and emergencies. I'm your host, Comrade Chantal Walker from the KSA Patriots. Good evening again, comrades. As I said before, I'm your host, Chantal Walker, and I want to let you guys know that we will be joined shortly by the guest speaker. However, we're asking for some time, and I want to sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. Thank you so much. Hi, comrades. Once again, a pleasant night to you all. My name is Comrade Chantel Walker. For those who are on Zoom, I welcome you. And for our comrades that are joining us by YouTube, I want to tell you guys a heartfelt thank you on behalf of the Patriots. So again, welcome to the Patriots World Mental Health Day 2025 webinar under the theme Access to Services, Mental Health in Catastrophes and Emergencies. The opening segment for tonight will be by our president, Dr. Reverend Paul Blake Jr., a psychologist. Thank you so much. Please welcome him, guys.
Thank you, Chantal. Just ask Kamal to do the prayer and reflection for us first, and then I will do the welcome.
All night, comrades. It's great to really partner with you all as we discuss a very important matter. And as I reflected on doing the opening prayer and just this small short reflection. One of the questions that a lot of persons have been asking as we have been seeing just symptoms and the tangible effects of mental health and what it does to us as a people is whether God cares, right? And I just want to share from you, from 1 Peter 5 verse 7, which says, cast all your anxiety on him, God, because he cares for you. And a lot of the times we feel as though, whatever we are experiencing and whatever we are going through, it's just meant for us to deal with by ourselves, right? In 1 Peter 5 verse 7, it is challenging us to thrust and to throw the weight of our anxiety on him. But it's also equally true, and what God is also saying is that we should also, where we can and where we must, cast our cares and our anxieties and our troubles, or that thing that we are carrying that probably we think that we are alone with in dealing with. He's saying, find someone to help you carry it. Find someone to kind of offload on, and that in effect will make your burden and the load that you're carrying lighter. The effect of that is really fellowship and finding a space where we can share. First, we can share with God, but we can also share with one another, right? And in John, the Apostle John shared that, beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers. Right? So I just want to leave with us tonight as we commence this critical and important discussion, that I am not alone. And God has provided that way for us to first come to him, right? He says in his word that he will keep in perfect peace him whose mind is stayed on him. And that scripture tells us that there are times when our minds are troubled for many reasons. We have the bills, we have the children, we have the family issues, we have the political issues, we have the national issues. We are fearful, fear of the future, fear of the unknown. We just don't know how things will work out. But once again, we are called to fix our minds, and it's not a magic one. It doesn't just happen. It comes by being deliberate, that we are fixing our mind on God, and by that, over time, His peace will be our portion. So just bow your heads with me as I just open up in prayer. Father, we thank you tonight. We thank you for every person who is gathered on this platform. We thank you for those who will join later. We thank you for this forum discussing what is a critical area that many of us, whether individually or we have known persons personally who are suffering or who have suffered. We have seen the effects, and we have lived through it, Lord. And tonight, Lord, as we commit this session to you, Lord, we commit the proceedings, everything that will be discussed. Lord, we present the moderator, the or guest speaker, that Lord, as he speaks, he will bring clarity, and he will bring words of wisdom, enlightenment to all of us here, that we could take this message and share with those who we know, that we will invite others to fellowship in this space, Lord. So, Father, we thank you even now. We bless you, and we give you all the honor and all the praise. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Kamal. Yes, thank you. Good evening, comrades, colleagues, and friends, and to those who are watching on our YouTube channel. It is an honor to welcome you on behalf of the PNP Patriots, the young professional affiliate of the party. And tonight we gather not just to make another date or to mark another date on the calendar, but to give meaning to an issue that affects every family, every workplace, and every community across Jamaica, mental health. And each year, the world pauses on October 10th to reflect on how we treat the mind, how we support the human spirit, and how we respond to the invisible wounds that so many carry. This year's global theme, access to services, mental health in catastrophes and emergencies, is particularly relevant for us as a nation that knows what it means to face real hardship, disaster, and emergencies and disruption. The human reality behind the theme, when a hurricane destroys homes, when violence shatters peace, when job loss brings despair, and when economic instability tightens its gaps. The trauma is not just physical or financial, it is psychological. Behind every broken system are broken people, and too often their mental well being becomes the silent casualty of our national crisis. In my own practice as a psychologist, I have seen faces of children and families navigating trauma. The young boy who has stopped talking after losing a parent. The teacher who cries in her car before class. The young professional who looks put together but is barely holding on inside. These are not exceptions. They are the reality of our time. And the truth is, our country cannot continue to thrive on overwork, emotional suppression, and survival mood. We cannot keep saying Jamaicans strong when we are really meaning Jamaicans are silently suffering. And so it's a call for change for us tonight. And so that is why tonight is so important. And as the patriots, the young professional, policy thinkers, and advocates, we are not here to have a pity party. We are here to demand policy reform, cultural change, and access to real care. Access to mental health services should not be a privilege for those who can afford private counseling or medical treatment. It must be right. It must be a right, guaranteed by the state and supported by institutions that understand that mental health is a national wealth. And so when people are mentally well, they are more productive, more creative, and more compassionate. When workers feel supported, companies perform better. When families are emotionally stable, communities become a safe haven and stronger. And when leaders in politics, businesses, and education take mental wellness seriously, our nation prosper. And so tonight, I just want to welcome you again. I see the president of the PNP YO, Senator Gabriela Morris, who is here. I just want to welcome her. I also see the General Secretary of the YO, Comrade Peter G. Ferguson. And so we as the Patriots, and I know the YO, will lobby for mental health leave policies, for community-based clinics, and for inclusion of psychological care in disaster management plan. Because after heavy flooding, after heavy earthquake or crisis, and people don't just need food and shelter, they need someone to talk to, and they need to heal. And so my charge tonight, to all of us, and is that we take our mental health seriously. And I want to especially thank our guest, Dr. Winston Delahaye, for his continued leadership in the field of psychiatric and addiction medicine. And his voice has been consistent in calling for evidence-based solution and national reform in mental health care. I also want to acknowledge the members of the Patriots and the executive who are here. And I want to thank the leadership of the party who continues to champion the values of equality, justice, and care for the whole person. And for all who are joining this evening from across Jamaica, the diaspora, the Caribbean, thank you for taking this moment seriously. And thank you for joining. I now hand back over to Chantal.
All right. Thank you so much, Comrade President. Indeed, mental health should be and must be taken seriously. So we're now moving on to setting the context. And when we speak to setting the context, it really speaks to the why, the reason, and the who, the what, and the time as to why mental health is indeed necessary and needed to be taken seriously. And as such, we will be introducing none other than the PNP Vice President, the PNP Patriots Vice President, Candace Hales, to speak on setting the context and in the introduction of the theme, access to service, mental health in catastrophes and emergencies. Comrade Candace Hales, we welcome you.
Thank you, Chantal. Is everyone hearing me? I assume so. So good evening, everyone. It's so great to see all of you logged in tonight. I know it's been a long day for most of us, but the fact that you made the time out to be here on a Friday night, it says a whole lot. It says that you think mental health is important. So with that said, I want to wish a happy World Mental Health Day to everyone who's hearing my voice. Now, before I dive into tonight's theme, I want to share something that's been sitting with me for a few days because a longtime friend of mine, she called me and she said, Candice, I feel like I'm running on empty, but I can't stop to rest because if I stop, everything will completely fall apart, right? She said she was on 10% at the time. So that really stayed with me because I know that's just not her story, but that's the story of so many young professionals. We're constantly pushing through challenges, trying to show up for everyone, even when we're exhausted. And the truth is, sometimes we feel like life is one long emergency. So that would then beg the question, when do young professionals get the time to check in on their own mental health? And for those who do slow down to check in on themselves, what type of help is available to them? That's why tonight's theme, Access to Services, Mental Health in Catastrophes and Emergencies, is such an important one. Over the past month, Jamaica has been having some very real and necessary conversations about mental health. And as we would know, it would range from unfortunate incidents of self-harm, like what we've seen with beauty queen Tyra Spalding, to seeing TikTokers like Rosalie crashing out on live. Just a few days ago, the Jamaica Observer ran an article. The headline was, Make Mental Health a Personal Priority. It was urging Jamaicans to treat mental health like any other national health issue, to take it seriously and just to break the silence around it. Right after that, the Gleaner had a publication. It said, mental health is a lifeline and not a luxury. No, that headline alone says everything. Because too often we treat mental health like something optional, something we'll get to after the crisis. But in reality, it's what keeps us going through the crisis. So when we talk about access to services, we're not just talking about therapy sessions, comrades. We're talking about building national systems that actually see people. As our president said earlier, in times of national disaster, whether it's COVID-19, a flood or economic shock, or even a national tragedy, we rush to rebuild the roads, restore the water, we fix what's visible. But what about the intangible aspects of it? What about the people who are quietly breaking under the weight of it all? Mental health support during catastrophes and emergencies isn't a luxury. It's a lifeline. And for young professionals, people like us, it's especially important because we're often the ones expected to keep things moving, to lead, to solve problems, but we cannot pour from an empty cup. That's why I'm especially proud that the PNP Patriots are hosting this seminar. And I want to pause here to acknowledge our president, Dr. Paul Blake, because many persons would know of him as a pastor, but he's also a clinical psychologist, as mentioned earlier, by profession. And he's the one who conceptualized this session. His vision was simple, and it was to create a space where we could have an open, honest conversation about our mental health, particularly in moments of crisis, because real progress sometimes it is about policy, but it starts from people. So generally, it's all about the people. So caring for our minds is a form of empowerment. It's how we stay grounded, resilient, and ready to build the kind of Jamaica all of us want to live in. So tonight we have the privilege of hearing from Dr. Winston Delahaye, a counseling psychiatrist and one of the leading voices on mental health in Jamaica. He's someone who brings both deep expertise and a real passion for people's well-being. So I encourage everyone to really tune in, not just to hear, but to listen and apply. Somewhere in his presentation, you might find a message that speaks directly to you. Maybe a reminder to slow down, to reach out for support or check in on someone who's been struggling quietly. Because if there's one thing we've learned from these recent headlines and from our own lived experiences, is that mental health can't wait for calm days. It's in the middle of the storm, the heartbreak, and the uncertainty that we'll need it the most. So if we want to build a strong Jamaica's come need strong minds, because every policy, every project, every movement starts with people who are well enough to dream and well enough to keep going, even in high pressure environments. So with that said, thank you all for joining us tonight, and thank you to the PNP Patriots team for organizing this space. And I do hope this session helps each of us to find new ways to just protect our peace even when life gets chaotic. Back to you, Chantal.
All right, Candice, thank you so, so much for, giving us the context. And you are indeed correct. I must say a round of applause to our president, Dr. Paul Blake, because sometimes the issues of life, it really gets to us as young people trying to figure it out. And as such, we say, hail the man. All right, comrades, there's just one interjection that I would like to make also. When we come, to speak, I would love for us all to turn our mics on so the persons that are on YouTube can actually put a picture to our beautiful faces, okay? Thank you so much. All right, so we move on now to the feature presentation by our guest speaker, Dr. Winston Delahaye. He is a consultant addiction and a general psychiatrist at the University of the West Indies and the University Hospital of the West Indies. And he will be presenting to us on the topic, mental health access and resilience in times of crisis. Let's give it up for Dr. Delahaye. Thank you so much, comrades.
Okay, thank you very much, comrades. Just checking if you're hearing me clearly. Can you hear me? Is
Yes,
everyone
we
hearing me?
can.
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
great. Okay.
Yes, we hear you.
So let me first thank you for the invitation and really congratulate you all for the focus that you're putting on something that matters and should always matter. It really is a relief to see that at an organizational level, we have the recognition of the importance of mental health. Didn't hear you a moment ago.
No, you can go ahead, Doc.
Yeah, you're hearing me? Okay. Right. So I really, really want to congratulate you as an organization for recognizing the importance of the subject that we're discussing. Uh, Today is World Mental Health Day. You have it each year. And the theme this year is mental health in humanitarian emergencies. No doubt there are a number of things going on which would be influencing this theme. Things like Gaza, and it's not just Gaza struggling, but Israel also is, because it's a war in both places, Ukraine and Russia. And of course, we shouldn't forget places like Sudan, where you still have issues going on, Colombia, for example. But guess what? We don't need to go very far. It's clear to me that Jamaica is in a crisis. We've been in a crisis for a number of years. When you have death rates, albeit some improvement in the last year or two, but our murder rates are at a percentage prevalence compared with countries with wars. And so we're in a perpetual crisis, and probably this hasn't been said in that sense. But there's no doubt in my mind that our day-to-day in this country isn't regular. It isn't normal. So we're not a normal society, and we need to recognize that and recognize by doing so the importance of focusing on mental health. And so if I could just draw from the WHO, World Health Organization's definition of health, and they're very clear and in-depth definition. And they speak to not only the absence of physical ailments, but, and this is the crux of it, the ability to appropriately cope with day-to-day stressors of living. Stressors are what the term we use for things which create anxiety, cause concern, and we all have them. You can't get away from them. Things like heavy traffic, as I just had, for example, or in the recent times, the reports of suicides. Some of us may know these persons. And so we're in a constant crisis. And I'm not so sure that we've really reached a level where we recognize the importance of addressing these issues. I'll tell you when it dawned on me. So before I did psychiatry, this is now 1998, I think, thereabouts. I was a military medical officer in the Jamaica Defense Force, and my specialty was casualty evacuation, where we went in by helicopter and moved people out. There's a particular flood in, I'm not remembering now the hurricane, but it was in Portland. All of Portland was flooded, and we were dropped in by helicopter in a particular valley, forgetting the name now. But our main aim was to assist persons, primarily the elderly, but anyone who would have been ill on medication by now, they are running out of meds, or have become more severely ill by virtue of the flood and the inability to access care. And it dawned on me, I'm in the middle of a flood zone and thinking, but hold on, there's no discussion going on here about the trauma of this flooding in all of Portland, everybody affected. All the homes that I could look around and see were affected, and the individuals as well. And it became very clear to me that we probably don't have it right. We still don't. But we must, and unless we talk about it, we won't get it right. And then that's the importance of a forum like this. So we recognize the importance of providing adequate services, and that doesn't have to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but adequate services as required based on our current status. And let me give you another example. So I recently completed a study at a particular high school that I attended. I happened to be the president of the Alumni Association. And without going into too much of the details, the prevalence of depression that we found was alarming. The prevalence of students with suicidal thoughts was even more alarming. This is not the least resource high school in this country. So you can well imagine if you extrapolate to other schools with less resources, then you can well imagine we are in a crisis, a silent crisis, because we don't know. People are not necessarily trying to know or want to know, and that's the concept of stigma. And that's one of the challenges that we face with mental health in our country. So stigma is that negative connotation, and it's everywhere in the world, including here, associated with anything sounding like mental health related conditions. And one of the challenges with mental health conditions, I'll give you an example, real life example. If we have bad roads, we all know because we're dropping into the potholes and you're having difficulty busting tires and so on and so on. With mental health, it's the individual suffering. So we don't all know. It's only the person suffering who know. Or like the president and myself who manage patients, we know because the people are coming in, but the average person in Jamaica isn't aware of the struggle going on, save and except conditions like recently the reported suicides and so on. And in and of itself, that's another area that needs to be managed. So without getting too deeply involved in it, the Jamaica Psychiatric Association, I'm a past president of many years, we've been engaging the media because there's a way to manage this. You can't just blast suicide here, suicide there. You are going to have another based on just that reporting. We know that. We know, so these are things we know. They've been well studied globally. And so we've engaged them. We think they are responding. And we've put out a public comment on the whole issue of mental health. And so one of the things that we want all persons to be aware of is the fact that we need to be aware and responsive. So I'll give you an example. You're with a colleague who reports to work early every day. There's no issue with, ability to get the work done. And then you notice in the last week, 2 weeks, they're late mostly. And it could be anything. They may appear to have a bruise somewhere which seems unusual, or they may appear sad. They may be sighing. They're not really having lunch when they should. but something has changed. So it's our responsibility, frankly, to, at the very least, we're not all therapists, but you can ask, is everything okay? It's also expected that you would ask, you would say, well, I'm asking because I care. These should be normal things. That's not a day-to-day thing in our country. And so to use a term, we use terms like just a go through. Well, our brains don't work like that. Our brains are not made to just go through, but we need assistance in thinking things through. And so I really want to open up to a couple of questions. I'll just complete my comments. And so there are various levels of support that can be provided. Again, it doesn't have to be psychiatry, but we've been responding to that need. So for example, I run the postgraduate training program at the University of the West Indies in Mona. And in my time, in 1999, thereabouts, we were 6 in number total. It's a 4-year program. We're a total 6, then moved to 8. Long story short, we're now 16, 17, 18 in terms of training. So we've been responding in that way, but that's a drop in the bucket because even with those increased numbers in the last 5, 10 years, we're not able to see everyone. And so in addition to that kind of specialized service, there is need and there is present counseling services. We can't just go clinical, but we must entertain the kind of counseling services provided by our churches. We have a high prevalence of those in Jamaica, fortunately, because there is support provided there. Persons generally well trained. And then at the community level, there are trained persons, social workers, psychologists. I just mentioned the school experience. Frankly, I think all our high schools, in addition to the guidance counselors, and when I went to my high school, we had 1 guidance counselor. Today, they have 5, and it's not sufficient. I think all high schools need about 10 such persons, and you have to look at the establishment to facilitate that. And I think all high schools in this country, given the level of problems that they have, I happen to know because I work closely with my alma mater, should have a psychologist. And so you need to train people to fill these positions. And so you need a plan, you need commitment. But all of that begins with will. And that's what's missing. And so we can't know everything, but if you don't, ask people who know to provide the kind of public education needed and the specialist approach required so that we can get things right. It's not reinventing the wheel, but these are well-studied things. For example, we know for a particular population what percentage of that population you need to be psychologists, psychiatrists. We're woefully short. I wouldn't even mention a figure, but we're not there or near. And those are just some basic things that you have. If you have the will, and I dare say in this group, it would be appropriate, the political will, to get these things done. And so it requires leadership in order to be effective. But I don't want to go on. I'd love to just open up to any questions that there may be. But to recognize the importance of protecting our own mental health, I too have a therapist. So I can't be exposed to trauma every day as I am. In fact, I managed the members of the Jamaica Defence Force even after I left for 20 years. And obviously, if you're going to be exposed, you're also at risk. And so you have to manage yourself. I must, every day that I go into my office or the university, Ward 21, I must be at my best because persons are depending on me. And so I need to ensure I'm doing everything within my power to keep myself sharp and address any challenges that I may have. So that takes accepting that responsibility, having the insight, but that's not everyone. So there are those who, as they say, fall by the wayside and they're not aware. And that's really the vulnerable, which is primarily our youth and the elderly in this country. And so really, as one of those like yourselves who may have the ability to leave, but it's obvious I'm not leaving, that's commitment. And you want to be here and you want to assist, as you all do. And so I think I'll stop there and just open things up. Moderator.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Delahaye, for that. You touched a point that said which really means that even the strongest person need a shoulder to cry on, and that is so true. So, comrades, does anyone have any question? You can drop it in the chat, or you can raise your hands, and I will go ahead. So I see Lenroy's hand. So I'm gonna go ahead and have Comrade Lenroy join us with his question, and Dr. Delahaye will give the answer.
Hi, good night, comrades. Good night, Dr. Delahaye. First of all, thank you for this. It is actually very timely when you look at what is happening. My question is centered more around trying to localize mental health, because when you look at um, the community health facilities, the clinics and support that are in the communities, do they actually have a mental health professional there in any form of capacity, with any degree of regularity? Because to see a general practitioner, I understand is specific days of the week you have to choose to get sick, because there's that capacity issue. Do we think that something like that could help, and that we could have a robust policy from the government to address something like that, not just putting down benches in places and saying they're mental health spaces? My little layman assessment is that it would require more. So you think something like that from a national policy would work, to take a look at the health centers and see how best we can outfit those to actually function a little bit more on the mental health side?
Yeah. So thanks for your question. Very, very important and practical question that you raised. And so just a short response in terms of the facilities offering mental health care. Not all health centers have mental health professionals. So, and we know because when we admit patients and we then have follow-ups, and so we ensure that we have a ward review. While having the ward review, we provide you with a referral to usually it should be the community service closest to where you live. We have to be selective in which one we're sending, because we need to send you, at least in the beginning, to those with mental health specialists. And these are the larger health centers. It's not all of them. Given the prevalence of, let's choose one. It's the big one. It's a big one all over the world, depression. And we can choose one closely following that associated with depression, trauma in our society. We ideally should have these levels of professionals in all our health centers. We don't. And so there are the larger ones that we use. The hospitals, it's very few with a psychiatric service like KPH, and there's Bellevue, a specialist hospital. And of course, the University Hospital of the West Indies, the regional hospitals, Cornwall Regional, St. Anne's Bay, and so on, Mandeville Regional. So those would all have inpatient services. We've been having a thrust in our training at training our psychiatrists to manage patients on general medical wards, because that's where we need to go. So the very stigma I referred to is heightened by having specialist asylums, is a word that I use, as is Bellevue. And so the world has gone away from that in the last 50 years. We're behind and trying to catch up. But we need to provide services for mental health care within the existing general medical services if we're going to impact the stigma. That requires specific management. So the training needs to be on par to facilitate that. And we're doing that at the university. Is it sufficient? Hopefully inadequate. But let's go back to the most prevalent, and it's the most costly of all illnesses that we manage in mental health. That's depression. And it's the unrecognized depression or inappropriately managed depression that leads to what we're faced with now at this time. And we're seeing it in the media. So all physicians are trained at the university hospital to identify, have the diagnostic suspicion, identify, manage, and treat depression, start to finish. So I can say that for the university, I've been there. We just had a 32-year award for the hospital, 25 at University of West Indies. So it's been a while that I've been there. But the point is, you can't wait to have to see a specialist to have your depression managed, and we're quite aware of that. So we ensure that we have the students coming through, all students come through psychiatry in the 4th year, some in the 5th, for additional periods, and they are able to identify, manage, and treat start to finish depression, save and except some more complicated cases which would get referred to us and would want referred to us. But that doesn't hold true for other conditions, and therein lies the challenge. And then other challenges would include access to medication. So one of the things I served as chief medical officer in 20, I think it was 16 and 17. And one of the things I ensured was they have different classes of antidepressants. So we ensure, and they work for different levels and presentations of depression. So I ensured before I left that we had at least one from each class on what they call the VEN list, the available list. So, and not the purpose of tonight's presentation, but free healthcare is one thing, but free healthcare that's not available is a different thing. And so we have to ensure that we have the requisite, medications available to the public. So we're not just diagnosing, but we're able to help as required. The point is, to answer your question shortly, it isn't adequate. And so that's why I have review of services. You look at the establishment, because numbers that worked in 1970 can't possibly work in 2025. That's just a no-brainer to see that. And so we need to review those kinds of things, not just overall healthcare professionals, but within that specifically the mental health component, because as they say, I mentioned the WHO definition, but they also say at the WHO that there is no good health without good mental health. And so we need to ensure that we have that, into the fabric of the management system of the country.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Delahaye, for that one. So we have Comrade IB. You can go ahead with your question for Dr. Delahaye.
Good evening, comrades. Dr. Delahaye, thank you for your presentation. So my question is, I understand the limitation that we have as it relates to resources, whether, cash resources, personnel, but let's just say patriots. If we as a body, we as an organization, we want to, take on these sort of forums or training as a program going forward. Do you see us having some sort of program to say, okay, we'll train persons on how to handle a situation with, say, someone who approaches you, say, hey, I'm having suicidal thoughts. So whether a training, so for one-on-one. So of course, ultimately we'll recommend that they speak to a professional, but say 5 steps or 3 steps in terms of what to do. Whether it could just be cue cards that, say, hey, I was trained by Dr. Delahaye, so to speak, on, a 5-hour course or a 3-hour course. That way, we can train other persons. So we have cue cards. All right, step 1, do X, step 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in terms of where suicide is concerned and in terms of where depression is concerned. So I'm just looking on us as an organization, how we can play a greater part outside of having, this forum annually. Could it be something we do quarterly? That is done by yourself and the president, some sort of training how, with members within the organization want to play an active role, how we could do that, and we could take that training, invite, say, other student organization, Kiwanis, you name it, and so forth. It just crossed my mind. I'm just wondering if that's something.
Yeah, man, but that's a good thing crossing your mind. So I can tell you, so it's not everything that everyone can take on. So for example, you mentioned suicide and so on. We really don't recommend that if you don't have the requisite skills, you engage someone. So what we can do and must do is like this program, public education. I can tell you one you can bite off right away would be training of guidance counselors in schools. because they don't know and can't know because it just hasn't been focused on. So at that particular high school I attended, we followed up. So you can't just do a research and project, have findings and sit down. You have to move on what the findings suggest. And based on that, I personally went in and trained the guidance counselors in using, for depression, it's called a PHQ-9 questionnaire. It takes about 3 minutes, 4 minutes to be administered. But if you don't know it, you're not trained on it, you can't do it. And recommended that for every behavior-related issues coming into them, meaning students who are having problems behaviorally, because that's where most of the depression is, and it just manifested at school. But the point is they need help. You should identify it. They now screen these persons. So when they're coming in to our clinics, they're coming in with a referral from a guidance counselor that says, so that particular screen gives you a score. Let's say it's out of 30 or 20. And it's obvious then, let's use 20. If you're at 18, you have a big problem. And if you're at 10, it's not as big as the 18, for example. So that facilitates the access to the severity of the problems to be able to tier things and focus on appointment times and so on. So a simple task like that would be a good way to go. Of course, as you know, once you have the political flag on it, then that attracts attention and it's not always positive. So I'm mindful of all of those things, but you're an organization with a purpose. You can choose to have a project like that. And I think it would go a very far way, just for starters. So it's public education and screening. That's the operative word. So you don't have to be a diagnostician. So what screening does is a very inexpensive way with appropriate tools, and they have them. I validated one of them, but there are many, to be able to identify those at higher risk than the average person of having a particular illness. You have screening tools for everything, including surgical things. We can focus specifically on depression because that's the main problem that we have. We can focus on trauma, PTSD. It's very prevalent, especially in some areas of our country. We know them. So if we can get screening done at those areas and a good point of contact, and the term we use is a captive audience. So for example, at the JDF, when I worked there, did 9 years, that morning sick parade, we call it, where persons are coming in with various ailments. That's a captive audience to just run a screen. 50, 70 people waiting to come in with all kinds of things, run a screen. You're going to get 10, probably. And then you can now refer those 10 to the psychiatrist to then have a more in-depth. So general public education about illnesses, you can pick one. You can pick depression in this country. And you run that, and the training, the guidance counselors is a good start for a group like yours.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade IB. Comrade Catherine Casserly.
Good evening, comrades. Thank you, Chantal.
You can go ahead and ask Dr. Delahaye your question.
Good evening, Dr. Delahaye. I would say two of us are more of the elders in this group, but thank you always for including us. Comrade President, this is a very good effort, this forum, and obviously this is a wide theme, really, because there's so many aspects and layers to it. One I wanted to ask you, Dr. Delahaye, is I have, through my personal experience, found that a wide, how should I put it? Much of our society is in denial, often in denial within these challenges within families, and that leads to often to addiction. Why do you think there is such a prevalence of denial in our country, and how could we overcome that?
Yeah, so that's a very important question, and the response is simple. Stigma. It's what's killing us. I had a patient in my office yesterday, and I'm opening the door to call in the patient. I was seeing the person for the third time. I became aware that there were stigma-related issues in the family, meaning they're just not comfortable with the diagnosis I have provided and the management that I've provided, to include admission to the ward. Even then, they're still not comfortable. So I open the door to call the patient in. I look at mother's face, and when you're in psychiatry for a number of years, you're able to just identify that with one look. And you saw a very uncomfortable person sitting who really don't want to be there. And so I ended up using the session to speak with mother. And boy, let me tell you, I could see that the patient or myself didn't have any support from mother because she doesn't believe that there is mental illness going on. And I spent the time I saw it fit to really explain to her, and I'm not so sure how successful I was, but here's what I did. So I then explained to her exactly how a relapse would be if she doesn't come to the next visit with her son. Because I've been around a long time, not because I'm bright, as I said to her. I just have the experience. I'm telling you exactly how it will work. By next week, this is what will happen. In 2 weeks, and in 6 weeks, he'll be on the ward, for sure. I'm hoping it made a difference. But the response to your question is stigma, culture. So, we have, I'm very Jamaican, love being here, as all of you know. But there are some challenges with our belief systems. And unfortunately, we have to tackle them. We have to get the word out there that something like depression is real. It doesn't mean you're weak. There is the concept of genetic predisposition, meaning if your mother had an illness, your grandparent had an illness, then it shouldn't be surprising that you are now presenting with the illness. We have to find ways of getting this into our society so people understand. And that none of us is exempt, including psychiatrists. We can have illnesses too, but we take our medication. The point is to get things out. Public education is a term we use in simple terms, so persons understand that it's okay to be unwell, even mentally. The important thing is to identify it and get the appropriate care. Don't know if that answered your question.
Yes, thank you. You definitely have. And yeah, I've seen it, unfortunately, myself. So if I may offer Comrade Blake, if we come up within Patriots with a project or program as Comrade IB asked or suggested, I would be happy to help to roll it out in Western Jamaica within, for example, the high schools within Hanover, Westmoreland side, St. James side maybe, because at the end of the day, as Dr. Delahaye says, it is education and we have to start small because we are not all the professionals here. But I have also found through my work with charity that often simple compassion and sitting down with somebody, listening and talking helps already a great deal.
And in fact, as you mentioned this, if I may, and I'll stop talking now and wind up, but I'm reminded of only 2 days ago. So I'm at this particular high school I went to. I spent a lot of time there because my child goes there, but I'm the president of the alumni as well. And I'm hearing they have a loudspeaker system that come on in the mornings before school starts at 7:30, and then they're on again at 2:50 for 10 minutes. That's a captive audience. It's microphone, it's speakers all around the school, and it's a large space, but you hear very clearly. And a simple sentence, and I suggested this to the principal, and the person agreed, just saying, we are aware that persons from time to time have challenges with their emotions and feelings. If you think you're having a challenge with your feeling, and you can specifically say you're feeling sad, please feel free to reach out to your form teacher or the guidance counselor. That's 30 seconds. They've been doing it since day before yesterday. We then had, yesterday was national, or was it day before, National Alumni Day. And we have a mentorship committee at this high school. went in and we met with the grade 11 students. And I recommended to the team that as a parting sentence, the exact thing I just told you, I recommended to the principal that we all say, and we did. But let me tell you, I'm standing at the back of the classroom watching my colleagues, all past students, engage the students. And you could tell, of course, I've been at it for a number of years, so it's easier for me, but you could pick out the 3, 4 that final parting sentence resonated with. And so there are ways of identifying persons with challenges. There are also ways of approaching them because you don't want to single out people. But with simple methods like that, you can have the message sent to then have the guidance counselors be prepared to observe that person hovering around the guidance counseling department. This is exactly how it works. Hovering a little more than usual, but wouldn't have the ability, at least not initially, to actually knock and go in. And so we need a system, and it comes with training, to be able to reach out to persons, merely asking, is everything okay? You want to have a seat? Because you notice the person hovering, coming around a little more, that area. They want to say something but don't know what to say. But you have to get the message out. Or there's no patient who thinks that there are other persons with what's going on with them. In their minds, it's just me having a problem, so I shouldn't say anything. And that's a barrier I want to break. That many persons have challenges. You may be. And so, should you be having a challenge with your thoughts, your feelings, come and talk to us.
Okay, great, Dr. Delahaye. Comrades on Zoom, just a minute, please. So Rhonda Clark from our YouTube stated, I think there are very little to do for our young adults. My son is hoping and longing to become a police officer. He did the test, medical and fitness tests, and until now, he has not gotten a response. So this is having a toll on him, and he's now having a mental breakdown. What should I do? Is there any advice you have for Rhonda Clark that is joining us on YouTube?
Yeah, so again, we don't need to, as I say in Jamaica, guess and spell. If you think there's a challenge, get a clinic visit and have the professional see the persons. All the physicians we've trained, this is every doctor in Jamaica, know the screening tools, know the symptoms of depression, and can go through, because that's one of the risks that you mentioned there, just given the circumstances. It doesn't have to be. But the point is, if you think there's a challenge, that's what we really recommend. Provide support, take the person, there are health lines. And by the way, I'm happy to send the public letter we sent from the Jamaica Psychiatric Association recently, along with some helpline numbers. So one of the things that we recommend, and you'll see it in the letter as you pass it around, is assist the person in calling the helpline. It's 24 hours. I think it's called New Life, NEWLIFE. That's 7 numbers, 876 New Life, if it is specifically having a challenge with thoughts of self-harm. And you have other numbers that will be there as you pass it around. The point is, though, assist someone with at least sitting and calling the number, give them the phone when you make the call. Or if you can and you have the time, then you assist them in going to the health center to see someone. So we're not recommending that all persons try to be therapists. It requires training, but support. And it starts there, get the person interviewed, and then it can move from there. So the response about the youngster is, if you think it's that it's impacting to that degree, get an appropriate assessment. That's your job, to facilitate that.
Okay, I see a question from Comrade Kathy Hook. You can go ahead. Comrade Kathy?
Yeah, here I am. Night, everybody. Hi, Winston. How you doing?
Going good.
Great. All right. My concern is in recent times we had a beauty queen and her story made the news. And one of the things that bothered me was everybody kept on saying nobody reached out to her, or she didn't reach out to anybody, and what happened to our friends and so on. And then afterwards, there's a friend of hers who posted that for some time he had had these discussions with her about her mind, telling her to die and so on and so forth. Granted, there's some severity here, but we also understood from this friend that she had gone to counseling, that she had been medicated, and so on. But she was also at home for some days with her mom. And you could actually see from the condition of her bedroom that all was not well. Um, but it's this whole thing of her not reaching out to anybody as against somebody reaching out to her. Now, one of the things I remember in COVID, I closed my business, I was at home, and I like a late morning nap. I get up very early and do a lot of things, and then about 10, 11 o'clock, I want to go sleep. And every time I went to sleep, my mom came to find out if I was in depression because people mustn't sleep at that hour of the day. Um, so I'm wondering now about how do we reach out to such a person? Because I
Yeah,
imagine that her mom would have seen that, her whole pattern of behavior had changed.
yeah.
What is the right way? What do we say?
Yeah. So glad you asked this, Kathy. Of course, I can't respond to you without having everybody know that your brother and I benefited from a particular scholarship to Budapest, Hungary, and that's why you have me talking here now. But in response to your question, so sometimes we have to reach out too. And so if it is that you're seeing auditing behavior, and that's how mental illness presents, things change, and we have clear definitions of it. A change in physical, social, and/or occupational functioning. One or more of those three. So it becomes obvious. Then we recommend that you have to go in, as your mother did, as you just described, to say, are you okay? Because the person may not have the ability to reach out, as you just described, some management, but what about compliance? And so we really recommend to all family members, you want to know what your loved one is taking. You want to check that they're doing that. And we're struggling to get persons, for example, to use pill boxes. Simple thing as that. So we're not in the punch out anymore in 2025. Pill boxes, you fill it every Sunday for the week. That way it allows a family member to lift. Let's say today is Friday. So if today is Friday and you took your meds, there should be no tablet there for Friday AM. Certainly it shouldn't be any for yesterday, Thursday. Just lift up Thursday. If you see a tablet in the receptacle, then probably something is wrong. You may not have to say something now. Do it again next week. If on Wednesday you open up Mondays and you see a tablet, then it's twice in a week you're observing tablets that shouldn't be there. Have very good reason to gently approach a person to say, how would you explain that you should be taking this every day because I helped you fill out the pill box, but I'm seeing some there. Could you be missing? And so on. So we need to be, and the term we use is aggressive. I'm known to be aggressive in management. Not all of us approach it like this. That's my style. You have to be aggressive about it, but gently, in providing help and providing assistance to persons in need.
All right, this is the last question. You can go ahead, Comrade Kamal. Comrade Kamal, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Chantal. Dr. Delahaye, thanks for your presentation. But I really wanted to ask you, we live in a society that tells us by and large that as men, that it is seen as, weakness to cry and to express our emotions. We grow up hearing, strong back and tough skin, as evidence of our manhood. But what would you say to our men, and not just the men on the platform, but just speaking to men in our nation, as to how do we best deal with this thing of mental health and the stress that comes with everyday life. But as men, we suffer in silence. And a second question is, what would Jamaica look like if we treated mental health as really something like going to the doctor? We encourage doctor's visits, but oftentimes mental health is not really considered of much significance. And so, but the first question is something that I would really want you to opine on, because it is something that a lot of our men struggle with, as they deal with the nuances of just managing life and balancing the different elements that comes with it, and but we suffer in silence.
Yeah. Very, very important question again, and it's one that's commonly asked. In fact, I have 1 or 2 presentations in the next month, specifically on male mental health. So really what you're looking at is culture, and so we have to break through. It is only with public education, by providing the kind of education required so persons are aware that men are not exempt, 1, 2. It's not a sign of weakness to determine that you need to get some assistance, at least in the term we use is ventilating, talk things through. But then we also have to provide a service. And then most importantly, in terms of what you and I can do right now, and I'll repeat that, you recognize some adjustment in, here's the definition again, adjustment in physical, social, and/or occupational functioning, and you reach out. Brethren, walk on. Things not right, I think, and I'd love to assist because I care about you. But we even have challenges expressing that. So it's complex, but if you leave it alone, they'll continue to struggle, and we'll have a major problem. Must provide a public education so we get persons at least comfortable that everyone else is talking about this. So probably it's okay if I reach out to my brethren or our sister and say, things not right. I don't know what to do. Can you guide me? And then we'll all be ready. Again, I'm sending out those helpline numbers, so you can send it around. At the very least, send a WhatsApp. Hey, here's a list of numbers I got from a psychiatrist. Call one of these, or better yet, I'm coming over lunchtime and I sit and call with you. That's something you can do. That doesn't take a lot. And then the other answer, what was the second part, please?
Kamal? Comrade Gilzine?
All right, but while he's there, so I've been to countries, I've been to somewhere like Oslo, the capital of Norway, where I'm seeing a billboard saying, if you are thinking of, and they have reason to have this, because they have one of the highest rates of suicide in the world in those Scandinavian countries. If you are thinking of self-harm, please call this number. Boom, 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 boom. Big billboard. So we need to get, it may not be, to that degree here, but we need to get some numbers up on some boards. So it's just a click away. And you're driving, past something that reminds you that you're having a challenge and here's help. Those things have cost, and everything, there's a cost associated with it. But you must be able to to have the necessary budget to facilitate access to those things. The National Council on Drug Abuse, for example, in my own specialty of addiction, they have a few up, and you pass and you see helplines, and people are able to call. We need them for things like tobacco smoking, just by no means sufficient. And generally mental health, depression. You can just single out those in this country, and then you move, spread it out. I'm getting close to having to go, moderator.
Yes, so we are now closing Dr. Delahaye, and our vote of thanks and closing will be done by IB Conte. So, Comrade IB, you can go ahead.
All right, everyone, thank you. So, good evening once more, comrades. So on behalf of the PNP Patriots, I really want to extend a heartfelt thanks to everyone who made it here tonight for World Mental Health Day webinar, which I would say, is a huge success. Firstly, Dr. Delahaye, our guest speaker, I really want to thank you for sharing not just your expertise and your massive, experience, but also just the compassion and, your lived commitment to advancing mental health in Jamaica. I, for one, didn't even know about your experience in JDF and, the various schools. Your insights on mental health access and resilience in times of crisis. It really reminded us that while systems and structures are important, real change begins with empathy, listening, supporting, and creating safe spaces for those who struggle in silence. You have really given us knowledge and motivation to act, and for that, we want to really thank you. So our president, Reverend Paul Blake, thank you for your leadership and your unwavering commitment to ensuring that mental health takes a priority. To Comrade Chantal, thank you for doing an excellent job on filling in last minute in terms of being a moderator. Really appreciate you. And finally, to everyone who joined YouTube and also here on Zoom, thank you for taking time to listen, learn, and lend your voice to this important cause. May we leave here with a renewed sense of responsibility, advocating for better access, stronger support system, and a more compassionate Jamaica for all. For sure, the Patriots, we will take the charge in terms of having some sort of programs going forward, how we can play a greater role in improving mental health across the country. Good night, comrades. If no one has anything else to add, thank you, and we'll talk soon.
All right, comrades. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your night. Stay safe. God bless you.